All right. Thank you very much for joining today. Of course, we know my name is Aisha Price and I'm with Loudoun County Public Schools. And today we are talking about Microsoft Excel, where this is an intro class. We've already covered a lot in Microsoft Word. We had some homework last week. Last week we covered some templates and you all created a template. We covered opening a spreadsheet, creating some columns and some rows. We were playing around with the spreadsheet. And then this week, we're going to go back and talk more about Microsoft Excel and the formatting of workbooks, formulas, sorting data, filtering data, and some number formats. So I just want to make sure that everybody is, okay with what we went through last week. We talked about some columns and rows, formatting cells, merging cells. Okay. And this week we're just going to go, in more detail. Okay. So one of the things we want to talk about is using number formats. And the big part of Excel, which I like Excel for, is because you can create a lot of different formulas, spreadsheets, tabs, things of that nature. Let me go ahead and transfer over to the Schoology so you can see where everything is. So the first assignment you all had was a Microsoft Word assignment. The second assignment was a Microsoft Word assignment. And now we're to the point where we're doing Microsoft Excel. Okay. And in Excel, we are talking about last week, we talked about opening a workbook. Okay, so here's all the videos from Schoology. I prefer you to use these videos because they're step by step. You can play them, you can pause them, you can go backwards, whatever you feel helps you understand Excel and understand the processes. I think it's best for you to do that instead of just listening to me talk on these videos. And last week we talked about modifying rows and columns. We went over some questions that you all had regarding the homework, and that was your homework for last week. This week for today, here's the videos for today's class, and they're all broken down into subject matter. So once you just click on the video, you open it, it will pop open as a YouTube and you can pause and play it whenever you feel necessary. One thing that we did go over last week was we opened one of those sample documents in our practice. And so we're going to be using that sample document today. So when you're going through these videos, what I suggest is you try to utilize your sample document. Today, we're going to add some columns and some rows to it. So that way we can start working on some of these formulas. We're going to talk about creating worksheets, creating additional workbooks to our actual worksheet. And so excuse me, and how you can modify them, how you can edit them. We're going to talk about creating some formulas, some simple formulas, and then we're going to get into a little bit more deeper formulas, understanding how Excel can do a lot of that work for you. You don't have to, I know I've already mentioned getting out a calculator. You don't have to do any of that. It will tell you, we'll go over what type of formulas that Excel has. And then we're going to go over filtering data. I know I showed you a little bit about what I did some filtering last week and sorting the data. I showed you a little bit of that last week, but I'd rather you watch this video because I didn't go into it in detail last week. I was just playing around with the spreadsheet, showing you guys different features of it. But I would love for you to, open your spreadsheet. So at this time, we're going to open the spreadsheet that we used last week. If you remember, this was your spreadsheet that I asked you to save. And of course, just for all purposes, this is not a real team roster. These are not real names. None of this information is real. This is all pretend. And we are using this spreadsheet. I'm just saying a disclaimer. We are using the spreadsheet only as a tool. It was a spreadsheet that was loaded already into the format. And so we're just creating different rows and lines to this format into the spreadsheet so that we can start utilizing it for other purposes. Okay. I know last week you guys saw me do some filtering. We're going to watch a video about filtering and sorting. Last week we went ahead and we did some merging of these cells. So we're going to show that. I think we went over that last week, but we can go over it again. And then we also added some rows to the spreadsheet. If you remember, the spreadsheet only had some basic information, and we went ahead and added these additional rows from and columns from F, G, H, I, and J. So you should, on your spreadsheet, you should have additional columns that we're having there. And then this week, what we're going to do is we're going to add a little bit more to the spreadsheet to make it a little bit more thicker. And that way, and we're going to look at seeing how we can format this document so that way when you have currency, like for here, this column I is dues paid, but there's no number to it. So we want to make sure that we tell Excel to add the number to it. So we're going to play around with formatting the currency. We're also going to have Excel do some formulas for us. And so you want to make sure that you fill out the spreadsheet so we can at least start doing some formulas, okay? And some of your practice is going to be, even if we don't do all of the formulas in class, you're going to utilize the spreadsheets so you can do some of these formulas on your own, okay? So anybody can tell me, you know, did you go back and look at the spreadsheet? Did you go back and do any revisions in it? And if you don't want to speak over the camera, that's fine. You can just put that in the message box. But I do want to make sure that everybody is in the same place that I am with this chart. And let me know if you are or not so we can work together to get you there. Okay. But those are some of the things I do want to go over today. And so you having the spreadsheet filled out is going to help you, right, understand and help you be able to create formulas. So let's go ahead. If you have not opened your spreadsheet, let's go ahead and do that. So some of the things I want to discuss with us, like I said, we're going to be talking about how we format using number formats today. We're going to use an autofill. And the autofill is really in Excel, and we can tell Excel when you're looking at the autofill. So if you remember, some of these autofill features are already here for you, but depending upon we know depending upon the version you have for Excel, it may be a little different. Hopefully everyone has the newer version. But yeah, so you can always go into format menu and you can tell it what to do, right? And so that's a good thing. And when we're talking about data and sorting, your data menus are here. So those are some features that you can use. If you're going to insert cells, you go to the insert menu and you can insert cells, you can insert rows. You would have to do is highlight, where you want the row to be, and you can tell it to insert. And then if you have a column, you can go tell it where to insert a column. So you would highlight where you want the column to be and then hit insert and insert the column there. So there's a lot of different features. We are going to talk about some of the different functions and things today, because Excel has a lot of different general functions that they use when you're talking about data. Um, but I think a lot of us probably are going to be using these different functions for, different reasons, right? Some of you realized when you were doing your budget that you needed some different formulas for that, or when you were just typing up some normal keys, you really wanted figures, you wanted it to calculate things for you. So that's very important to be able to understand where everything is. And then we were talking a little bit about frames and viewing and how you can freeze a frame to make it show on the first row. So if you were here and you wanted it always to show the name, you can tell it up to row 6 and it will freeze it for you, right? Or say, for example, so it keeps the first name and last name, cell phone, street address, the position, the age. So it keeps that row up there. And the reason why it asked you for freezing all the way up to row 6 is because it recognized that that's where row 6 was. Now, say for example, you have all your names here. Or if you want to have it frozen this way, you could tell it to freeze it, and it could freeze it up to column B, right? Oh, right, because there's a merge cell. So if there's a merge cell in there, it won't let you freeze it. So that's why a lot of times it just depends on how you're going to create your documents. One thing I don't normally do, unless I'm creating something that's special and cute, I normally wouldn't have a big, you see how this whole header right here. It's huge. It's from these rows A1 to J5. Normally, what I would do if it were just me and we didn't have this wonderful presentation, I most likely would just start a title page, and my title page would just be one row. And then I would start my data below. That way, if I did want to merge some cells or I did want to freeze it, you wouldn't have to worry about the error message coming up. But technically, if the error message wasn't there, you could tell it that you wanted it to freeze some of these rows and your columns. So you can freeze it up to column A or freeze it to column B. So that way you can see. So if you see I highlighted column B, and if I tell it view freeze, column B, and what I'm asking it is to just show me these first two names. So every time I scroll, just how we see at the top, I would be able to scroll to the right and always see the names. That works well, especially when you're doing a lot of data. I work with a lot of student data, and for me, I like to have the column A and B. I like to have those, excuse me, the rows. I like to have those highlighted for me. Um, that way my columns are on the left. I have all my student information on the left, and then everything to the right is all the data that I'll be sorting through. So when I would look through it, I would still be able to see the names of the individuals. So it just depends on how you want your data to be sorted, okay, and how you're going to use the document, okay. We already know that if you make any changes and you want to go back and maybe you made a change to something and you didn't like it, you can always hit the undo or the redo. If you want to cut some docs, say you were in a field and you wanted to cut it and change the name, you could always choose cut it, or you can just rewrite into it. And then when you're pasting a value, you could either tell it to paste the value, and if you just tell it paste a value, it would do like the number, right? If wanted to do a format, say for example, we had a formula there, we could tell it to paste that formula there. So that's one of the reasons why it has all these, different questions in regards to when you're pasting. So for example, I'm going to say I wanted to copy something. So if I want to copy, say for example, I want to copy this, right? I can copy it. Hold on one second. And then I can tell it to paste. So it could paste the value there. It could paste the format. It can paste the formula only. And you could do a combination of the two. So you can tell it how you want it to utilize it. Okay. And then also some of the different tools, they're just pretty similar to what we used in Word. You can always make a copy of it. You can save it as a Google Sheet. You can share it in email, right? You can download it, things of that nature. You can rename it, you can move it. So there's all those different tools that are pretty much similar to what we saw in Microsoft Word. But the biggest thing is really utilizing your different toolbars. A lot of these features are already here, and I think the best way for you to really understand them, we didn't go over borders yet, but we'll go over borders. This is the merging cell. This is if you have data and you want to center the data, or you want the data to be left or on the right justification. So there's a different ways that you can sort out your data. You can tell the text to wrap, and wrapping text would be if you have a lot of documents, a lot of wording in one box, and you want everything to appear in that one box instead of it flowing over to the next cell, you can tell it to do that. Okay. So there's a lot of cool features. You can insert a link, you can insert a video. Here's your filtering, sorting. And also you have different filter views, and these are different functions that we're going to start learning today. Did I have a question? I just wanted to make sure I went over all that before I answered my question. But yes, did I have a question? I saw a hand. Did you not have a question anymore? Okay. And then you can always write in the text box too. And it's fine if you were late to class. It's totally fine. We understand we're all busy, and we're all dealing with different things in this world. So I wouldn't worry about that. The biggest question I had was, if you just joined, what were some of the questions that you had about homework and some of the challenges that you went through with your assignment. What we're doing is we're opening our Excel document that we created last week and we're just editing that. And then today we're going to talk about your number formatting. Um, Okay, so this is what we're talking about today. We're talking about formatting workbooks, we're talking about formulas, sorting the data, filtering the data, and number formats. So the first thing I was talking about was number formats. Another thing we're going to be talking about is creating formulas and editing formulas. You'll see that Excel can do a lot of different formulas for you when it comes to utilizing data that you don't have to, utilize a calculator. You don't have to play a guessing game with it. It's a great software for that. And I'm going to show you how to create some formulas. And I would suggest you just opening your document and playing around with it, and seeing if you could do some of the formulas that it's talking about. What we're going to do before you do one of those formulas, we're going to do some editing to the document. We're also going to talk about creating additional worksheets and modifying those worksheets, how you can copy and paste that worksheet, copy an additional worksheet for that same workbook. Say, for example, if you're doing a Monday through Friday worksheet, or if you're doing a calendar worksheet, or you're working with data and you're working with different schools, or you're working with data and you're working with different centers. And so you could utilize it in one workbook. You can have multiple one worksheet, excuse me, you can have multiple workbooks. All right. So that's one thing that we talked about. And then last week we talked about templates. So let's go ahead and get started in some of these things. Before we get started, I want you to go to the document that you created, and we're going to make sure that we tell this row that it is a dollar sign. So if you go ahead and click on your column I, right, and then tell this column I that these are or this is a number. So just click on you can do it this way. Just highlight the whole column at top and then tell it to be a dollar sign. Okay. Some other things I wanted to, when we get to formulas, we're going to start changing some things in this document. But for right now, the first thing I just want to make sure is that you tell it that this is a number. Okay. I will highlight and say that you see here in our toolbar that you have format as currency. You also can tell it to decrease the decimal point by 2. So if you don't want the decimal point there, you don't have to have it there. Or if you want it back, you can increase it. So I always, for numbers purposes, I'm an accounting person, so I like to see the numbers. Um, so that's a good way for you to understand. And then we're going to put in a date here as well. So let's see the date. We're going to call this registration date. Let's see what we call application date. Application date. And I'm going to tell it to wrap the text for me. Does anybody remember where that is? So you go in the first column and then you click text wrap. Okay. And then you click the middle one, it says wrap. And so now it wraps the whole word. And then I can just drag it all the way over to where I want it to be. Okay. So application date is a date we want to put in here. And we're going to change. So different students signed up for different dates. So let's go ahead and just add some of those dates in here. I'm going to show you the way to add a date with a certain format. And the reason why, you can either add the date in this type of format with, March 4th. Today is March 4th, 2024. Or you can do it in format 3/4/2024. So you can do it in that way. So go ahead and add some dates. And the reason why I'm telling you to do this way is because we want to get the system to do some random dates. So what I just did, and I'll go back and do it again, is I'm going to undo it. And so what I'm doing is I'm telling the system that I wanted to add some dates, right? And I wanted to do the dates in order. So if you just hover over and you see if you go to the end of your cell and you drag it down, you see that little box that comes, you drag it down a little bit, it will go ahead and autofill. This is called autofill, and you'll see this in the video. And when you do autofill, it's filling in certain dates for you. Now, if you don't want those certain dates there, you don't have to. You can just do a copy and a paste. So I can do a copy and I can tell it to paste, and I can tell it to paste it with the format, or I can tell it to paste the values only. So you guys can pick which one you want to do. And if I tell it to just do one, it's just going to do whatever I want it to do. Okay. And the reason why is because I want to add some of these dates so you guys can see and play around with these different dates. So I'm just gonna copy and paste some more and I just want like random dates that people applied. Okay. So I'm just copy all I'm doing is highlighting. See, highlighting with my mouse, going to the right, copy, and then I'm highlighting how many spaces I need. Or you don't even have to highlight how many spaces you need. You can just hit Control V, paste, or you can just tell it to paste. Okay. So you can do that. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I just want some dates there. And the extra dates I don't need. I can just hit delete. Okay. And then this one, I'm just going to tell it to change the format. So there's multiple ways you can tell it to change the format. So one way is changing it yourself. Another way is if you see, you go here under your format, right? There's all these different features. So the format has a number, it has percents, scientific, accounting, financial, currency, currency rounded. It has dates, time, all of that. So you can tell it to format it to the date you want. Okay. Another thing is if you're in it and you wanted to tell it to do your formatting, you can change it at any time. You can also tell it to do a custom date and time, or you can do a custom number format. Okay. And if you do a custom number format, excuse me, you can tell it how you want it to show. All right. So it's currently showing as month, date, and four numbers for the year. So that's why it looks that way. But you can always change it to one that you feel comfortable with. But that's the general way that it looks. Okay. So make sure you did that. Make sure you did some of your um, wrapping. Another thing you could do is if you say you want all of this information on the left, just say, for example, I want my data to show a different way. So for me, if I want all my data to be on the left, I can highlight all of these columns and then I can tell it to right now it's centered. I can tell it sometimes it's centered and sometimes it's not. It just depends on the way it was in the beginning. So you can tell it to center it by clicking on this toolbar up here and telling it to center, or you can telling it to go to the left, or you can tell it to go to the right. It's just how you want it to appear. Okay. I personally like center. I think it's just easier to view. So that's one thing that I'm going to do there. Okay. Um, Another thing is, say, for example, we're going to tell it to add up all the dues. So there's different ways. So you could either, and we'll go over those. You could either tell it to add up all of the dues that are paid just by one school, or you could tell it to base it based upon the school name, or you could tell it to just add up all the dues all together. So if I just wanted a total of all the dues that are paid, I'm basically telling it that I want you put an equal sign below, and then you would highlight the rows that you wanted to total up for you, and then click enter. Excuse me, it didn't do what I wanted to do. Oh, because it was I know why. All right. So let's do this again. I think there was a value up there that it didn't like. So you can tell it just to click whatever it is. It already is going to pop up a formula for you. So it knows that that's what you want. Okay. And there's also a lot of conditional formatting that I could do, and I could have it sort by different schools. So what I could do is we're going to go over some sorting today. So what I could do is I could have it sort um, just by the school that I want. Okay. And then if I have it, so take out any blanks, there's some blanks in there. You have to be careful also if you have blanks because blanks make it harder for sorting. So say if I just wanted one school to show up, so I'm just going to do clear all. Hold on one second. Clear all. And then I'm going to click on the school I want. So that one. And then if you highlight down here, you see if I highlighted this number, it tells me down here as well what it is. But we're going to do a cool exercise where we're going to insert some rows, and we're going to ask it, and we're going to do some formulas, and we're going to tell it to tell us how much dues are paid based upon the school name. So we'll do that after our activity, after you watch some of the videos. But I think it's cool for you guys to see some of this information for yourself so you can see how you can utilize Excel for you. There's also, great tools like say you tell it to look in one field and it will tell you, for example, if let's do clear all. If you wanted to tell you how many catchers are there, there's only one. But if I wanted to tell me, well, that's not helpful. So there's only one. So I wanted to tell me how many center fields are there. There's only one center field? No. Clear all. I'll probably play with this one because I wanted to tell me more than that. So let's see. What would have more pictures? Only one picture. Okay. All right. So I'm going to play around with this document because we wanted to show us more than just one picture. Center fields. Okay. It's not really what I wanted to see. Let me see all the pictures, all of the fields. Select all. Okay. So I think it's also these blanks in here. So let's see what we have. We have pitchers, we have second base, first base pitcher. Okay, I see what it's doing. Pitch runner. Okay, so this is another thing you can do. You could tell it to sort, and you could tell it to sort by certain condition. And if you put filter by condition, and you can tell it what condition you want. So you can say, tell it text contains, and you can tell it what you want. So I'll say it contains a picture. Let's see if this will work. Yep. So see how when I told it that I wanted to find all the different pictures because they have pictures in here in different ways, you can tell it to find all of your pictures. Okay. And then I'm highlighting it and I see down here that I have 5 pictures. And then we can also do formulas for it to tell us um, equals, and we'll do those next week. So it can tell me to look here. I can tell it to look in this cell, excuse me, in this column E, right? Through the whole document and tell it to tell me how many pictures. So I can do conditional formatting and then I could do a formula over at the bottom or over on the side for it to tell me all of that. So that's a good thing about Excel is there's so many um, different ways to to do them, right? And then you just tell it to go back to none and it will pop everything up. So yeah, let's go over some of these videos so you can get an idea of some of the cool tools that you have to use. But I just wanted to make sure that everyone had the application date here. If you wanted to make sure it looked formatted with your actual document here, you can do it looked like the font here was Calibri, so you can go to your menu up here. You can change it to Calibri. You can see what Um, this is so this color was white. This field, we see that field is like a different color. So you can always click on there. You can always change this to the white. A lot of your features are already here down here. And then it looks like it was bolded. It looks like it was a 12. So it looks the same. And then you want to make sure that your filter is back there. So you can put your filter there. You can tell it to unfilter, or it can filter for the whole range. So what I did for filtering, a lot of people were asking me about filtering. All I did was highlight starting in that last row, and I went over here, and you see there's already a filter little funnel. So I did that. Okay. So there's a lot of cute little ways, and there's a lot of different filter views, and you can actually tell it to save a filter. So say you're using a filter for a certain amount of time and you're always wanting to use it, you can tell it to save as a filter view for you. And then you see how it says filter one, and you can just click in here and write whatever filter one is called. So say for example, you had document the data sorted in different ways and you wanted those filters to be saved, you can do it that way as well. Okay. So that's a cool thing about Excel. Um, and then we want to make sure that everything's formatted correctly. I know that some of you were asking, well, how did you drag this over? So all I did was literally highlight all of these cells, and I hit this little merge button up here, right? And I merged them all so that way it's even along here. Okay. So there are like a lot of different ways that you can use Excel for it to tell you what you want. Also, you can go here and it could tell you, you see how we have some that did pay and some that didn't pay. You can do a formula down here. It can tell you which ones paid, which ones didn't. So there's a lot of cool ways. You can also we can do a pivot table, and a pivot table can tell us too. All right. So we'll go over pivot tables next week and charting and tables. This week, I just wanted to cover just some of these basic things so that you had them down and so that you understood where I was going with the lesson, and so that you can start playing around with it. And then you'll see once we do some of these formulas today that you'll probably get to the point where you're going to start making some of your own formulas for the spreadsheet, right? And so one of the projects is you're going to be using this spreadsheet. I'm going to give you some tasks to create some formulas. All right. So if anybody has any questions, if not, I'm going to stop the video. And then we're going to go into some of our videos that I want you to watch. And then we're going to take a short break and come back and do the rest of the videos. Unless you guys want to take a break beforehand, it's completely up to you. But I'm going to go ahead and stop the video and answer any questions that you have, and let me know, what help you may need. Okay. All right. So go ahead. If you have any questions, let me know. You can always put them in the message box, and then we'll proceed. Okay. But thank you so much for your patience. And I hope that this little tutorial helped, but we'll go over some more when we watch the videos. All right. Does anybody have any questions? Not yet? Okay. Did you guys want to take a break before we start the videos? Because there's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Let's take a break before. You want to take a 10-minute break? You want to come back like at 7:30? Okay, let's do that. Let's take a 10-minute break and then get ready. Make sure you open your document, and then we'll come back at 7:30. Okay? All right. I'll see you soon. All right, we ready for some videos? Anybody have any questions before the video start? No? Okay.
In Excel, every workbook is different. That means you may want to modify certain things, like the size and layout of your cell, to better fit the data you're working with. This column has been resized, for example, but not quite enough. Most of the text is still getting cut off. I'm going to increase the width a little bit more by positioning my mouse over the line in the column heading, then clicking and dragging it to the right. Another option is to auto-size the column. This will automatically adjust the width so that it fits the contents of the cells exactly. Just double-click the line instead of dragging it. Now the column is perfectly sized to the text. Rows work the same way. You can adjust them manually or auto-size them to fit the height of your text. Sometimes it's useful to be able to resize all of your cells at once. In this example, I'd like to make all of my rows the exact same height. To do this, click the Select All button in the top left corner. Then resize a row, it doesn't matter which one, and the change will be applied to the entire worksheet. Next, I need to add another row to this list. I'd like to put it in between row 4 and row 5. To add a new row, all you have to do is select the row heading below where you want the new one to appear. Then click the Insert command. The process is similar for inserting a new column. Just select the column heading to the right of where you want the new one to go. Click the Insert command, and a column will appear to the left. Deleting columns and rows is just as easy. First, select the column or row you want to delete, then click the Delete command. The column or row will be deleted, causing the other cells to move and fill in the gap automatically. Just remember that there's a difference between clearing and deleting. Deleting cells removes them from your worksheet. Clearing just removes the contents. You can also move a column or row to a different location. In this example, we'll move a column. All you have to do is select the one you want, then click the Cut command. Next, select the column to the right of where you want the column to be moved. Click the Insert drop-down menu on the ribbon, then choose Insert Cut Cells. Another useful technique for rearranging data is the ability to hide certain columns or rows. For example, I don't really need to see these 3 columns right now. I'd rather focus on the customer's email addresses. If we right-click, then choose Hide from the menu, the columns temporarily disappear. To unhide them, select the columns on either side of the ones that are hidden, then right-click again, and choose Unhide. Let's fast forward to the finished worksheet. Next, I'd like to take a look at wrapping text, which is one way of addressing cells that contain more text than they can actually display. For example, I'd like to resize my column of addresses to about half its current size, but still be able to see the contents. We can do this using the Wrap Text command on the ribbon. As you can see, this displays the text on multiple lines. Now for the finishing touch, combining the cells in the top row so the title of my worksheet can be centered in a single large cell. To do this, select the cells you want to merge, then click the Merge and Center command. There, that's perfect. To access more merge options, open the drop-down menu here. You can merge across, creating merged rows instead of a single large cell if you have multiple cells selected. You can also merge without centering, or split your cells up again. There is a downside to using the merge command, though. If you want to merge multiple cells, each containing data, merge will only keep the contents of the upper left cell and discard everything else. So you should be careful when using this feature. The best way to learn about merging cells, wrapping text, and working with columns and rows is to practice. So the next time you're using Excel, look for ways that you can customize your worksheet to better fit your data.
Opportunities for a better life.
When you have a lot of different rows in your spreadsheet, you may want to sort the data so you can view it more easily. Sorting can reorder things alphabetically, numerically, by date, or even in a custom order that you choose. Depending on your preference, you can either sort from the Home tab using the Sort and Filter drop-down menu, or you can use the commands in the Data tab. In this example, I have a worksheet with a list of t-shirt orders, and I'd like to sort it alphabetically by last name. Just click any cell in the column you want to sort, and then click the ascending command. That's the one that says A to Z. You'll notice that when we sort one column, Excel also reorders the other columns so that each row still has the correct information. If we wanted these in reverse order, we could click the descending command. That's the one that says Z to A. Now, this method doesn't always work if your spreadsheet has an unusual layout. Watch what happens when I try to sort the data here on the right. See how the header row is included in the sort by mistake? In a situation like this, you might need to manually select the cells you want, instead of relying on Excel to do it for you. This is called sorting a cell range. Select the cell range you want to sort, including the header row if you have one. Then, click the Sort command, and a dialog box will appear. And first you'll want to check the box that says My Data Has Headers. Then, use the drop-down menu on the left to choose the column you want to sort by, then select a sorting order. In this example, we'll choose largest to smallest. When you're done, click OK, and the range will be sorted by the selected column. Notice that the rest of the worksheet wasn't affected by our sort. Now, sometimes the default sorting options won't work for what you have in mind. For example, if we sort the columns that contain the t-shirt sizes in ascending order, the order will be large, medium, small, then extra large, because the column is being sorted alphabetically. You know, it would be better if the sizes were listed in a more logical order. In other words, small, medium, large, then extra large. For this, we'll need to create a custom sort. To begin, click the Sort command, and on the right, you can see that it's ordering the column from A to Z. If we click this drop-down menu and select Custom List, we can enter the t-shirt sizes in the order we want. So I'll click in the box and start typing. Small, medium, large, and extra large, and I'm pressing enter after each one. When you're done with your list, click the Add button, and make sure that your list is selected over here on the left. Then click OK to confirm, and OK again. And now the worksheet is sorted the way we want. The only problem with this is that every other column is completely out of order. What I would really like is if the homeroom numbers were organized within each t-shirt size. I can do this by sorting by multiple levels. This will let us sort first by t-shirt size and then by homeroom. Click the Sort command and you'll notice the different options at the top of the dialog box. You can add a level to the sort, delete a level, or even use the arrows to change the level order. In this example, we want to add a level. Now we just have to select the homeroom column, and we'll leave the other two fields the way they are, sorting the values from smallest to largest. And when you click OK, you'll see that within each t-shirt size, the homeroom numbers are listed in numerical order. As you can see, there are a lot of different ways of sorting your data, depending on how you want to organize it. So take some time to experiment with the different options and find the ones that best suit your needs.
Goodwill Community Foundation, creating opportunities for a better life.
Filtering is a great feature of Excel that gives you a lot of control over which parts of your spreadsheet are displayed. You can use it to show only the information you need, or find something specific, while hiding the rest of the data temporarily. Now, it is important that you have a header row because the filtering tools will actually get added to the cells in this header row. In this example, I have an equipment checkout log, and there are a lot of things to keep track of, so I'd like to use some filters to simplify it. First, go to the Data tab and click the Filter command, and you'll see these drop-down arrows are now added to your header row. These are what you'll use to access all of the filtering options. Here, you'll see a list of all the different values that appear in this column. I'd like to just view the laptops and projectors, so I'll uncheck this box to quickly deselect everything, then check Laptop and Projector. Click OK, and now the drop-down arrow has been changed to a different icon to show that there is a filter applied to this column. We can narrow down this data even further by adding another filter to a different column. Let's filter by the date that the items were checked out. This shows all the months that appear in this column, so I'll uncheck the months that I don't want, then click OK. To get rid of any filter, just click the icon again and select Clear Filter. And I'm going to go ahead and clear this other filter that I applied earlier. So that's how you do simple filtering. Now let's take a look at some more advanced techniques. Using the same menu, you can also search for values that appear in this column. For example, a lot of our equipment is made by a company named Ceres. If we type that here, Excel will look for a match anywhere in this column and then list only those results below. To apply the filter, just click OK. For a little more control, you can use text filters instead. You'll access these from the same menu under Text Filters. Here you can filter information that fits more specific criteria. For example, cells that contain a certain number of characters or data that doesn't contain a word. In this example, we're going to choose does not contain and then enter laptop to exclude anything that contains this word, including laptops and laptop travel bags. Click OK, and Excel will refilter the data. Next, let's say that I only want to show items where the ID number is between 3000 and 6000. I can click the drop-down arrow and go to Number Filters. And there are a lot of different options here, but for what I need, I'm going to choose Between. Now I can type whatever values I want for these two fields. So this filter will show things that are greater than or equal to 3000 and less than or equal to 6000. Click OK, and now all these values are between 3000 and 6000. Date filters are really cool because they can display data from a certain time period, such as last week, last year, between two dates, and so on. In this example, I'd like to find out which items were checked out between July 15th and August 15th. I'll select Between, and then in the dialog box that appears, I'll use this calendar icon to select July 15th and August 15th. Then click OK. And at this point, we have 3 different filters applied to our worksheet. So it's filtering out most of the items and just showing the ones that meet all of the criteria. If you'd like to remove the filters, you can clear them one by one like we showed you before. You can click the Clear command in the Sort and Filter group to clear all active filters, or you can turn off filtering altogether. Just click the Filter command to do this. As you can see, filtering can narrow things down really quickly, which will help you find the data you need. And because it includes so many different options, we bet you'll be able to use it with just about any spreadsheet.
Yeah, sure. Let's say I've created a formula and now I want to copy that formula to the rest of the rows in my spreadsheet. You may already know that you can copy cells by dragging the fill handle, which is this little square here. But if you have a lot of rows, this can be pretty awkward. In this case, I have 300 rows. Your spreadsheet might actually have thousands of rows or even more. Luckily, there's a shortcut. Just double-click the fill handle, and it will copy the formula down automatically. If we scroll down, you can see that the formula has been copied all the way down to the end of our data, and it's just looking at the other columns and seeing where the data ends and then trying to match that. So I recommend using this shortcut whenever you can.
Goodwill Community Foundation, creating opportunities for a better life. Goodwill Community Foundation, creating opportunities for a better life.
Remember using formulas to calculate math problems in school, like 2 plus 2 equals 4, or 2 pizzas times $10 equals $20? You can use these same formulas to work with numerical data in your spreadsheets, just like you would use a calculator. Excel uses standard operators for math equations, like a plus sign for addition, a minus sign for subtraction, an asterisk for multiplication, a forward slash for division, and a caret for exponents. You're probably used to seeing equations like 5 plus 5 equals, but in Excel, the equal sign comes first. That's because the cell itself contains, or is equal to, the formula and its value. Let's start off with a simple addition formula. We're going to calculate the total budget for June and July. However, instead of entering these numbers, in other words, 1,200 plus 1,500, we're going to use cell references. Here's how it works. First, select the cell where you want the total to appear. Then type an equal sign, which is how you always start a formula. Next, type the addresses of the cells you want to add. In this example, D10 plus D11. Notice how the cells you've entered are actually highlighted in your worksheet, so you can easily confirm the contents of your formula. When you're ready, press Enter on your keyboard, and Excel will display the answer. Now, you may be wondering why we used cell references instead of numbers. It's because they give you the ability to change your original values without having to retype your formula. Excel automatically recalculates the answer, so it's always up to date. For that reason, you should try to use cell references whenever you can. To edit your formula, all you have to do is double-click the cell. If you make a mistake or change your mind, you can press Escape on your keyboard, and it'll go back to the way it was. Let's try another example, this time with multiplication. I want to calculate the total price for plastic silverware, so I'll need to multiply B4 by C4. Once again, start by typing an equal sign. But instead of entering the addresses manually, we're going to use something called the point and click method. Just click the cell you want, and the address instantly appears in your formula. Most people find this much easier than typing out the cell addresses by hand. When you're done, press Enter, and the answer appears. Finally, I want to show you a quick way to add a formula to several cells at once, specifically these 3 cells. Instead of retyping the formula above, we're just going to select the first cell, then locate the fill handle in the bottom right corner. Click and drag the handle down, and when you let go, the formula appears automatically in all 3 cells. Now we can see the total cost for each item. This is a great shortcut for duplicating formulas if you plan to use the same one more than once. Formulas really are one of the most powerful and convenient features in Excel. Now that you know how to use them, they can help you calculate all kinds of useful data.
Did you know that AI is set to create 97 million new jobs by 2025?
Goodwill Community Foundation, creating opportunities for a better life.
You may already have some experience creating simple formulas that have only one type of operation. But sometimes you have to create more complex formulas that do have more than one operator, for example, addition and multiplication. To do this correctly, you'll need to understand how Excel is calculating the answer. When solving formulas, Excel uses a set of rules called the order of operations, which you might remember from math class. The order of operations determines the order in which the formula will be calculated, so you know exactly how to write it out. The first thing that's calculated are any equations in parentheses. Then, if you have any exponents, you'll calculate those. Next is multiplication and division. And finally, addition and subtraction. Excel knows to use the order of operations whenever it calculates a complex formula. It's important that you remember it so you can create formulas that'll give you the correct answer. To remember the order, you can just use the acronym PEMDAS. Or to make it even easier, remember the phrase, "Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally." Let's take a closer look at some examples. In this formula, 5 plus 2 is in parentheses, so we'll calculate that first to get 7, and then we can just multiply 3 times 7 to get 21. This formula contains an exponent, 3 to the power of 2. We'll need to calculate that first, and then we can do the addition. If you have multiplication or division, that'll come next. Here we multiply 2 times 4 to get 8, and 9 minus 8 equals 1. Now multiplication and division are considered to be on the same level. That means if you have both of them in your formula, they're calculated from left to right. In this example, we'll do the division first, and then the multiplication. If we wanted the multiplication to happen first, we could just put it in parentheses, or we could rearrange the formula so the multiplication was on the left. Finally, we have addition and subtraction. Just like multiplication and division, these are on the same level, so we'll calculate them from left to right. Okay, now let's put them all together. This formula may look really complicated, but we're just going to go step by step through the order of operations, and you'll see that it's really not that bad. We'll start with the parentheses. We'll calculate each of these to get 2 and 3. And as you can see, the formula's already starting to look a bit simpler. Next, we'll look to see if there are any exponents in this formula. There is one, 2 to the second power. When we calculate it, it becomes 4. Next, we'll do the multiplication and division, going from left to right. And now all that's left is addition. And that gives us our answer, which is 8.75. And that's the same answer Excel would give you if you entered that formula in your worksheet. Now I'm going to show you why it's so important that you follow the order of operations every time. If you don't, your formulas won't give you the correct answer. In this example, I'd like to add these 3 values and find out how much the sales tax will be. I'll start by typing the equal sign, which is how you always start a formula. Then I'll calculate D3 plus D4 plus D5. Next, I'll multiply by 0.075, which is the tax rate at 7.5%. Now, this may look like it's going to give us the correct answer, but it's not. That's because we didn't follow the order of operations. Remember, multiplication comes before addition, so Excel is going to multiply D5 by 0.075 first. Then it'll add D3 and D4, which isn't what we want. We want these 3 values to be added first. So to do that, We just need to put them in parentheses. Parentheses are often the best way of controlling which parts of the formula are calculated first. And when this formula is calculated, we can see that the answer is $20.56. Writing complex formulas really isn't that difficult once you know how they work. Just remember to use the order of operations and you'll get the correct answer every time.
Decimals, percentages. You may have already noticed that Excel allows you to type just about anything into your worksheet. Along with text, you can use many different kinds of numbers, such as decimals, percentages, dollar amounts, dates, and more. To do this, Excel uses a feature called number formats, and it's really important to understand how they work. Number formats tell Excel exactly what type of data you're using. When you enter something into a cell, Excel will try to apply the right number format automatically. For example, watch what happens when we enter a calendar date into this cell, such as 1/1/2015 for January 1st. If you look at the number format drop-down menu on the Home tab, you'll see that this cell is now using the date number format. This tells Excel that we're working with a calendar date and not another type of number. If you click the drop-down menu, you'll see that there are several other number formats to choose from. The general format at the top is the default number format for every cell in your spreadsheet. When Excel isn't able to guess what type of data you're using, it'll usually just leave the general number format applied to that cell. You know, in this example, I think I'd like to modify the number format to use the long date option instead. That way, it'll be easier to read in our spreadsheet. And there we go. When you select a cell with number formatting, you'll see the actual value of that cell in the formula bar. So the long date number format hasn't changed the actual data in our cell, it only changes the way it's displayed. And number formats don't just make our data easier to read. For example, since Excel understands that this is a calendar date, we can use the fill handle in the lower right corner of the cell to continue this series of dates. So now we have January 2nd, January 3rd, and so on. Definitely a lot easier than entering each of these one by one. Unfortunately, Excel doesn't always understand what we're trying to type the same way that a person would. And because of this, Excel requires you to enter your data in a pretty specific way. For example, watch what happens when we type January 1st in this cell. As you can see, the number format has not changed. This cell is still just using the general number format, and that means Excel didn't understand what we wanted. It also means our fill handle isn't going to work correctly. Instead, it just copies the data from this first cell, which isn't what we want. To fix this, we'll need to change this value to something Excel can understand, such as 1/1/2015, or just January 1 without the ST. There we go. So you can see that Excel has applied a custom date format to this cell, and that's because it understood what we wanted. And now, just like before, we can see the cell's actual value in the formula bar, and we can even use the fill handle to continue this series of dates. Let's take a look at another useful but potentially confusing number format, percentages. Remember how we said before that certain data needs to be entered in a certain way? Well, when you type a number followed by the percent sign and press enter, the percentage number format will be applied automatically to that cell. In this example, let's say that we're working with an 8% sales tax rate. Now, as you may remember from math class, percentages can also be written as a decimal number. For example, if I change the number format for this cell back to general, it'll appear as 0.08, which is just another way of writing 8%. I point this out mainly because it's easy to make a mistake with percentage formatting if you're not being careful. For example, if we type 8 into an empty cell, and then apply percentage formatting afterward, Excel will think that we meant 800%, which isn't even close to what we wanted. In our experience, it's best just to include the percent sign whenever you're entering a percentage into Excel. That way there's much less risk of making a mistake like this. Okay, there's just one last thing we'd like to point out. Below the number format drop-down menu, you'll see these small buttons with a left and right arrow. These commands allow you to control how many decimal places are displayed in your cell. As an example, let's say I'm working with a currency value like $19.95. Now, as you can see, Excel automatically applied currency formatting when we included the dollar sign in this cell. Now you can show more decimal places to increase precision, or show fewer to simplify your data, or even round it to the nearest whole number. Just like before, we're not changing the actual value of this cell, as we can see in the formula bar. We're just making it easier to read in our spreadsheet. Now that you know how number formats work, take some time to ensure that you're using them correctly in your spreadsheet.
Goodwill Community Foundation, creating opportunities for a better life.
Grouping is a good way to make your data more manageable. You can use it to show or hide certain parts of your worksheet so you can focus on the information you need. You can even add subtotals to summarize or outline your data. In this example, I have a list of t-shirt orders, but I really don't need to see the people's names and payment information right now. So with these 3 columns selected, I'm going to go to the Data tab and then click the Group command. Now we can show or hide this group using the button that's attached to this bracket here. Click the minus sign to hide or collapse the data, and the plus sign to show it again. To ungroup any data, make sure it's selected, then click the Ungroup command, and you're all set. The subtotal command is similar to groups. You can use it to create groups automatically and also add functions like sum, count, and average to help you summarize your data. In this example, I'd like to tally up the number of orders for each t-shirt size, including small, medium, large, and extra large. Before we can add a subtotal, our data has to be sorted by the column we plan to summarize, so I've already taken care of that here. As you can see, the t-shirts have been put into a custom sort order, going from smallest to largest. All we have to do now is click the subtotal command, and a dialog box will appear. Here we'll select the column that's going to be the basis for the subtotal. In this case, that's t-shirt size. Next, we'll pick the function that we're going to be using. Now there are several common functions to choose from, like sum, average, and product. But we're going to use count, which will just count the number of cells that contain each size. If you had numerical data, you could choose sum instead, and it would actually add the values from each of those cells to create a subtotal. Finally, check the column where you want the subtotal to appear, then click OK. Now, a couple of things have happened here. Each t-shirt size is now in its own group, indicated by the brackets here on the left, and all those groups are inside a larger group. This is also called an outline in Excel. The other thing that's happened is that each group has a subtotal beneath it. So we can see the number of shirts that have been ordered in each size, and at the very bottom, we can also see a grand total. To make the worksheet easier to read, we can show or hide the groups like we did before. But when you have groups inside of groups, like we do in this example, sometimes it's easier just to view them by level. Just look for the buttons to the left of your worksheet. The highest level, which is 3 in this case, will show all of your data. Level 2 will hide the details of each size, leaving just the individual subtotals. Finally, level 1 will hide everything, so we can only see the grand total. Let's click 3 to show the entire worksheet again. Okay, there's one more thing we'd like to point out. When you use subtotals, you'll notice these extra rows have been inserted in the spreadsheet. And while they're very useful for viewing our subtotal information, if you need to change the formatting or arrangement of your spreadsheet, you might find that these subtotal rows just get in the way. In a case like this, it's best to remove subtotals from your spreadsheet before you make any other big changes. To remove subtotals from your worksheet, all you have to do is click the subtotal command, then click the button that says Remove All. Grouping and subtotaling can make your worksheet less cluttered, more organized, and easier to view, so keep these features in mind the next time you need help.
Yes, I saw your comment about that. So so we'll go over subtotals, but when you do, and I saw that noticed that it didn't show you the top bar. So yeah, so that's the other unfortunate thing. Like sometimes when you're doing more complex things, it like cuts off information. So subtotaling. So I'm going to show you another way to do that. But thank you for mentioning that because I noticed that in the video when I was watching it before, and I was like, why is it doing that? But it's because it opens like a whole nother screen. So what I do want us to do, did anybody have, besides that subtotal question, did anybody have any other questions about what they watched in the videos? Um, I wanted to show you a tab. So I wanted to show you something. So if you all remember, um, I gave you a great website that I think will help you all with the tutorials. And so let's see. This is the website. I posted it on Schoology. So if you go to your Schoology and you scroll down, so of course, these are all of the Excel videos that we've been talking about. And the videos that we viewed today, we did number formatting, formatting cells, creating worksheets, formulas, filtering data, sorting data, creating more formulas in Excel, um, MX Excel subtotals, and then the Excel practice worksheet. So if you click on the Excel practice worksheets and you go to the link, click on the link, it has a link and you can go to all these different tutorials that we're talking about for class. Okay. And that way, when you're looking through and you see how all these videos came up that we were talking about, this document goes step by step. Okay. So that's the document that I'm in. And you can download. So here, if you would see this, so you talk about different Excel rows, comments, but there's always a section where it tells you to do a practice workbook. And when you download the practice workbook, of course, you have to download it, and then it's going to pop up on your screen to say download up here. So you're going to download it, and then you need to do enable editing. Of course, that little box that comes up, the yellow box is enable editing. And then you can do any of these worksheets that are in here. There's also the videos that we talked about, the columns, rows, Excel, cells. So everything that I'm talking to you about or teaching you about, honestly, is here. Okay. So I put it on Schoology, but it's also in this link that I posted up there for Schoology for you. And you can actually download any of these spreadsheets and follow what it's saying. So it actually gives you things to do. So this one tells you column C is too narrow. Please widen the column. So that it gives you different practice tools. And if you keep scrolling down, it tells you different things it wants you to do. Okay. And modify the row height. So there's all these different tools in here that you can use. So if you don't want to go back and look at the videos, I always suggest you look at the videos. But if you are someone who wants to read it and go step by step, this one was talking about inserting, deleting, and moving and hiding rows. So this one talks about that. But it goes over everything extensively, if you guys can see this, okay? And then if you want to just look at the videos, you can go back to tutorial and it will show you all the videos that are here, okay? Um, and it starts from the beginning, from when we started class, okay? And so it has different sections, right? So cell basics, modifying columns, rows, and cells, formatting cells, which we're doing today, understanding number formats, working with multiple worksheets, using find and replace, check spelling, page layout and printing, formulas and functions. Some of these formulas I'm not going to go over with you, of course, today, but I am going to go over with you at a certain point in time. Some of them I will not, because it does not pertain to what you guys are asking for or need it. Sorting data, filtering data, the groups and subtotals are here. Next week, we are going to talk about tables, charts, and we did talk a little bit about conditional formatting, but we're going to talk about that next week. So I just wanted you to know that that is out there for you to use. But did anybody have any questions about what we looked over today? Because what I want you to do is to go back to the document that we were working on. And I'm going to ask you to do some modifications, because part of your homework, and I'm going to let you guys out at 8:30 today. It's kind of beautiful outside, so I'm not going to, maybe 8:30, 8:40. I'm not going to keep you that much longer. But I want you to go back into your document, and hopefully you can see this. And some things that I did here, we already added some of these different rows. One thing I wanted to show you, we're just going to practice inserting a row. We're going to practice editing this document. I do want to show you what I want you to do for your homework. So I'm going to try to make it easy for you today, but I wanted you to, at least have an understanding that this is what we're going to be doing. Okay. But let me go ahead and record this part of it so that you'll have it for later. But if you don't, I'm going to explain to you what I want you to do. Okay. So let's go ahead and record.